Joining me now is the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Tony Blair. Mr. Blair, a pleasure to have you back on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You've known Vladimir Putin since, I guess, the year 2000, even before. You went to St. Petersburg. You met him many times. Is the man the world sees now conducting this ruthless invasion of Ukraine the man you knew and the world knew then?
He certainly doesn't seem to be. Now, whether he was always like this, it's hard to judge. But the person that I first met, as you say, in St. Petersburg, the western-facing city of Russia, was someone who at that time wanted good relations with the West. Remember, at the time, we were the G8, not the G7. Russia was part, sat at that table along with the other European countries, America, and so on, Canada, of course. So at that point, he was very much oriented towards the West and wanted to reform the economy. He changed over time, but in the times that I knew him, he was, if he'd become much more brutal, he was also still very calculating. And the real anxiety people have about his behavior over Ukraine is that it's such a colossal miscalculation. I mean, ever to think that Ukraine or Ukrainians were going to accept being brought under the heel of a Putin dictatorship.
Right. Okay, two things. First, is he stable? I just want your view. There's a lot of people say he's mad. In your view, is Vladimir Putin still stable, rational?
I think he is still rational in the sense that he's taking decisions and he is running this campaign. He's in charge of it. I think the invasion of Ukraine is not merely utterly appalling. It is, in one sense, an act of madness because, by the way, whatever happens, and I believe in the end, this will be a situation where Ukraine emerges stronger, but whatever happens, Russia's going to emerge weaker. It must do. I mean, its economy is going to be subject to huge problems. It's going to be isolated, certainly from the West in the world. And you've got, I think, somewhere in the region of 3.5 million people have left Russia. I mean, never mind the displacement of people in Ukraine. People have left Russia. And why? Because if you're a young person who wants to get connected to the world, and you see your government, your leadership taking this decision, you realize this is not a place you're going to prosper.
The question is, what's the way out? What's the end game from, let's go from the Western side. Does he go to chemical weapons? As a source that I talked to in Ukraine, the former Ukrainian ambassador to Canada, has told me the Ukrainians are expecting the use of chemical weapons. They are not ruling out the use of tactical nuclear weapons. If he's backed in a corner, what could Vladimir Putin do?
Well, it's hard to judge. I mean, he could do that. Or there's tactical nuclear weapons. I think it's unlikely because I can't tell you exactly what the response of the West would be, but it would be very significant. So you just can't tell what he might do. But for the West and for Ukraine, what is essential is that he shouldn't profit from the aggression. Now, I think in the first couple of weeks of this conflict, we might have been able to bring it to an end on a relatively straightforward basis. The problem now is Ukrainians will not agree to give up any of their territory or even push him back to where he was prior to the 24th of February. So it's going to be very, very difficult. Now, talking to people in Ukraine myself, I think Ukrainians feel quite confident of what they're doing militarily. I think they're going to carry on trying to push Russia back and out. And then it's really for them to decide whether there comes a moment when there's a window of opportunity for negotiation.
Finland and Sweden have applied to join NATO, abandoning years of neutrality. Russia has said this is a provocative move. How does this redraw the map of Europe, and will this provoke Russia?
Well, it's another miscalculation by Putin, isn't it? Because his action was supposed to weaken NATO, and it's actually strengthened it. And it's not surprising the Finns and the Swedes have changed their mind. I mean, what better, What better reason could you have for changing your mind than seeing a completely peaceful country, Ukraine, with a democratically elected government on the doorstep of Europe, being invaded in this way and subject to this brutality? So it's not surprising. Look, he will claim it as a provocation, but it's an obvious act by Finland and Sweden to protect themselves for the future. And I think the NATO, in a sense, has rediscovered its purpose. It's brought itself around to recognizing that there are values at stake and not just interests. And of course, Ukraine itself now wants to join the European Union. And I think Europe will offer a path to that European Union membership in a way probably it wouldn't have before the invasion.
Two last things, Mr. Blair, while I've got you. There are critics in Russia, but in other parts of the world, that say the Western support of Ukraine and sanctions against Russia are hypocritical, given the fact that why is this different than both the U.S. and Britain when you were the Prime Minister and the invasion of Iraq back in 2003? You have answered many questions on this. I know about this. Does the invasion of Iraq undermine the credibility of the West to criticize the actions of Vladimir Putin?
Look, sometimes this argument is made, but I just think it's important we expose it for what it is, which is just an attempt to excuse Russian behavior. Iraq, the removal of Saddam Hussein, he was a dictator that started 2 regional wars, responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths of his own people, including the use of chemical weapons. 12,000 people died in one day in Halabja. He was in breach of multiple United Nations resolutions around weapons of mass destruction, and he was a brutal dictator. The country was, whatever problems happened afterwards, the country was pleased to have him replaced with a democratic process. You can't compare that to the attempt to remove Zelensky, who's a democratic elected president of an entirely peaceful country that's never caused any problem to its region.
Okay, last question for you. Should the West try to remove Vladimir Putin from power? And can he survive if this war goes badly?
It's not, look, our task is a very simple one in respect of Ukraine. And you in Canada, I think you've got over 1 million people of Ukrainian descent living in Canada. So, this is something that will matter greatly to you. Our job is to get him pushed back, defeated over this aggression towards Ukraine, and allow Ukrainians to decide their own future in their own way and do it peacefully.
Tony Blair, a pleasure to have you back on the program, sir. I appreciate your view. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.